So I'm gonna share some of my personal thoughts about episode 4. Probably gonna be kind of a short video. I don't feel like this was that very intense of an episode. Felt like it was very straightforward, very predictable in a lot of ways. So really not too much to break down here. So like I said, I'm just gonna share just a couple of thoughts that I had while watching the episode, and I did go back and watch at least the majority of the episode again, and I still kind of felt like really not a whole lot to break down here, but like I said, just going to share some quick thoughts with you all. Now, of course, what stood out right away in this episode is that Negan decided to come and visit Alexandria himself along with his people. And obviously, with the position that he's in, that's not something that he has to do. So this was basically very much planned out for him to go and show off his power. And I think it was about maybe getting a closer look at what Alexandria has to offer and all of that. But it was mainly a power thing for him. I mean, he was on a serious power trip in this episode. And I won't lie, I'm still having some problems with the character, but I'll get into that as I move along here. Now, I will say in episode 1 of season 7, I was very much proud of Carl, the way that he carried himself. And, like I said before, I feel like he could be a great leader one day, but he definitely still has a lot to learn. He was kind of hot-headed in this episode. I understand that, he is trying to defend them and make sure that they had enough food, especially looking out for his younger sister. I understand that, but still, it's pretty foolish what he did, especially threatening Negan directly. And he's already seen what Negan is capable of doing, so I really did not like that. And I feel like the only reason he really got away with it, for one, is really not so much his age, but just the fact that I think Negan kind of wants to keep Rick in somewhat in control of Alexandria, because he feels like he has Rick under, in his pocket. So I don't think he wants to do anything to really send Rick over the edge, or to have him like retaliate or just basically lose his mind. So I think he does want to keep Rick's kind of in a certain zone, and he knows that if he hurt Carl at all, that would just completely mess that up. But again, I feel like Carl definitely has to learn that their group is just not in a great position right now. Yes, they've accomplished a lot in the past, but they're really not in a great position right now. So Carl, and this is not a pun or anything, I'm not trying to be funny, but he does need to open his eyes, or at least open his eye, and just see what's really going on. At this point, I definitely think Negan doesn't feel threatened by this group, even though he made this big fuss over the 2 missing guns. Obviously, there's not much they could do with those. One of the characters even pointed that out. I think it was during the church meeting that the meeting in the church, but there's really nothing much they could do with just 2 guns. So Negan doesn't feel threatened. Again, it's just about power, showing that he can have it all. And of course, Carl really messed things up. I think Negan legitimately wasn't really thinking so much about their weapons, because he did seem like they were kind of wrapping up their visit. So yeah, Carl definitely screwed that up for them. Ended up having them lose all of their weapons, or at least most of their weapons. I'll talk about that later on as well. So Daryl didn't have a huge presence in this episode. I don't even think he got to speak a word. He was basically just there doing work for Negan. And I think right now he has to pretty much play his part. And I think we all can agree he definitely has a debt to pay. And I think that's the only thing that's on his mind right now. I don't see them breaking Daryl at all. And I don't know if Negan could really ever believe that Daryl is broken. I don't know. That's something to me that makes Negan seem like not the most intelligent character, because he really mistreats a lot of his own people, and it's just a very illogical thing for a villain to do. So that's one thing that's really bothering me about the character. Even with Dwight, it seems like Dwight to a certain extent is sort of drinking the Kool-Aid and going along with Negan and everything, but I mean, Negan has the man's wife, so it's like, come on, it's just not very intelligent on Negan's part. I'm really getting frustrated with that character because of some of his decisions and just the way that he runs his complex and everything in general. So I do like Father Gabriel had a good presence in this episode, and I think his faith is very much important. Of course, they're going to need that, and I really like the clever thing that he did with the Greys. That was really nice. I mean, he basically, was a hero in this episode. If you had to point out one person that was truly a hero, I think is definitely him. So, yeah, Father Gabriel has really stepped up, and I hope to see even more great things with the character here in the near future. I also like the one thing I really did like about this episode as well. Something else is that Denise isn't forgotten. It does bug me sometimes when a character dies and it's like they were never there. So I do like that they're keeping her memory alive and that Rosita definitely wants revenge. And I'm kind of wondering when Tara is going to come back into the picture. And somebody let me know. I feel like she's with the people of Hillside. But I can't remember for sure what exactly happened with Tara. But I know Tara and Denise had connected. They shared their kiss right before Denise ended up dying. And I just can't remember exactly what happened with that. Like I said, I feel like she's with the people of Hillside, but somebody let me know about that, because I just have a bad memory sometimes with certain story elements. Now, to me, Dwight, I definitely feel like he's an unsympathetic character. I think I said this before. I just don't like this guy, even with the things that he's dealt with personally. Basically losing his wife and being punished, having the iron taken to his face. I still can't feel for the guy because he's just such a jerk sometimes. And of course, we know that he was responsible for Denise's death. So I just really find him to be unsympathetic. But at the same time, he's an important character because I think for Negan to have a downfall, it is going to require that some of his people turn against him. I really think that's the only way. That's the only way I see the character logically being taken down. And I think Dwight is definitely in that position. So again, I don't think I'm ever going to feel any sympathy for the guy, but I do feel like he's in an important position to sort of help with that, I guess, mutiny, you might say, or whatever you want to call it. And Negan, again, what's bothering me about him in the way that he treats his people, the way he talks to them, it's just like, who would really die for Negan? Now, we have seen from last season that there were some people that said, I am Negan, and, they did basically die. It seemed like they died for him, but when you really think about it, it's not so much that they died for Negan, it's just that they decided to go ahead and die at Rick's hand, at the hands of Rick's crew, instead of dying at the hand of Negan. And when you look at the way that Rick's crew takes out people in the way that Negan does, I mean, to me, that's kind of an easy choice. I think I'd rather go ahead and bite a bullet than, ever meet Lucille. So I think that's what that was about. And just that, his people have a lot of fear in them. I think it was Matthew Movies that pointed this out, that Negan is really ruling with fear and, not love. He doesn't really have anybody that really has his back. It's like they're there because the way he's running things is working to their benefit. But again, they're not really living like kings. Negan is the only one that's really living like a king. He basically has his little harem going on with his women, and everything. So, yeah, he's the only one that's really living like a king. Everybody else is just still kind of scraping by. And that's why I really feel like his people should open their eyes. It just doesn't make sense to me that they would put up with the way that he treats them. So the character Spencer, I've never really been a fan of this guy. I feel like he's a liability, and I feel like he has always been a liability. His parents, at least they were naive, but at least they were good-hearted people. But Spencer in this episode really showed just how selfish he is and just how much of a danger he can be to the group. And by the way, the big question for some people is Rick broken? Of course, Rick is not completely broken. Rick right now, I think he's taking some time to try to figure things out. He has a lot to process, so I don't think he's broken. I think he's just sort of taking his time, and there is no way that Rick can completely accept this situation, permanently. But he at the same time, he is sort of stuck right now because he just can't handle another loss at this moment. But the way that he threatened Spencer, I was glad that he did that. That showed that he still has some fight in him and that he's not going to put up with that nonsense. So yeah, Rick is all right, and Spencer, if Spencer goes, I'll be perfectly fine with it. He doesn't need to make it out of the season, in my opinion. Something you may have noticed recently is that walkers, they really don't have much relevance at this point. In this episode especially, they were basically like props. I mean, there was no like serious threat with them. The closest threat was Rosita getting a little bit overwhelmed, and again, that was Spencer being a liability. You know, when somebody goes out into the woods, I understand going to find them, but why in the world would you yell out at this point? Like, how many times have we seen characters get hurt or possibly killed because somebody's, you know, speaking out or yelling out or whatever? So again, he's such a liability. I really cannot stand that character. But again, back to the walkers. Like I said, the walkers are just not a huge plot point at this moment. You know, we'll see what happens if the walkers become more relevant later on in the season. And something else, I'm sure that I'm not the only person that thought about this, but the way that Negan made Rick hang on to Lucille, it really reminded me of the way that guys are in prison, the guys that are dominant. And I'm not even going to use the term, but we know there was some prisoners who are not the strongest get made into in prison. And it's like when the weaker guys in prison basically have to hold somebody's pocket and walk around with them. That's basically what Negan was doing. Negan was very much playing by prison rules and being very arrogant, just very arrogant. And his last line, I'm not gonna repeat it on my channel because I do try to keep my channel PG at least, but yeah, that to me was completely out of line. I mean, he already showed how much power he had, so for him to say that to Rick, I was just like, oh, I hate him for that. I really hate him for that. And I guess I really shouldn't criticize Negan completely, because I mean, the purpose of a villain is to be hated. And I know that a lot, I guess in some ways we've kind of been spoiled by villains that we can both kind of hate but at like love at the same time. We can almost kind of root for them to a certain extent, especially villains like you know, Heath Ledger's Joker, and even Tom Hardy as Bane. And those just stand out to me. It's not so much about them being in the same movie series, it's just those are villains that really pop up in my mind. But there's some other villains like that as well. Even Hannibal Lecter, you know, as ruthless as he is and everything, you can almost kind of cheer for him to a certain extent too. So there are a lot of villains like that. So maybe we're kind of spoiled in that way, and we're not used to really hating a villain. And I think that's what they are trying to do with Negan. They really want us to hate him. But my thing is, though, it's not so much that I hate him. I just feel like he's coming across as kind of stupid. Honestly, that's what really bothers me, because the actor is so great, and I feel like the character made a strong impression to start off with. He definitely did that, but he just doesn't seem highly intelligent, though. Like, he's doing a lot of things that just seem like they have to backfire on him. So that's what's really bothering me with him. Now, Michonne in this episode, from the jump, you could tell that part of what Negan has been trying to do, and this again goes back to the prison rules thing, he very much is trying to emasculate Rick, and it is working to an extent, because that look that Michonne gave Rick when the episode started off and they were in bed, you could just tell that she had lost a lot of respect for him. And Michonne is always going to be a fighter, and I really feel sorry for all those guys, because you notice that they didn't take her sword. She still had her sword. Surprisingly, I thought for sure that Negan was going to stop her and say that he wanted the sword too. But yeah, I feel really sorry for all of these saviors that are about to get their heads chopped off for burning some mattresses. And that again was just a really trying to watch my language again, but that move on their part, I hated that. That was just so petty and just so stupid. I mean, they already have control, so to force the people to be in discomfort, it's just childish, basically. And it's really tough to respect that at all. You know, I can understand villains being evil. They're supposed to be evil, but there's a difference between being evil and just being childish. And that was really childish, petty behavior. So yeah, just can't respect that. And you know, if we finally got, I mean, it's basically something I think we all realize, but it's never been stated outright. And you know, I was glad to hear Rick finally go ahead and say he realizes that Judith isn't his, that, you know, thinking about the time that he was in a coma and everything, that you know, Judith has got to be Shane's daughter. So that actually made me respect Rick a lot. You know, he talked about how much he loved her and he wants to protect her, and he has to see her as his daughter, you know, to really do his best for her. And I've been in that position before. I was a stepfather before when I was married. I was a stepfather, I had a stepson. So if you've never been in that position, you've never been a step parent, you don't really realize how tough of a job it is. And yes, it is a job. It is a really tough job to have, to love somebody else's child and really care for somebody else's child. It's not easy thing to do. So that made me respect Rick a lot, and again showed to me that he still has a lot of fight left in him. He's just going to be intelligent about it. He has been kind of careless here and there in the past. I mean, you know, even the way he first went at the Saviors, obviously that backfired a lot on him. You know, there were repercussions, but still, he's gonna do what's best for Judith. So there's no way he's gonna let her just stay in this situation long term. And of course, we know just the reality of watching a TV series. Of course, they wouldn't leave it this way for long. There has to be some push back and forth. Otherwise, there's really no drama. It's just watching people in servitude, and there's nothing interesting about that. Now, I never felt that Eugene was in danger. They hinted at it way too strongly for one thing, and they just wouldn't, you know, these writers, it's obvious they wouldn't make it that clear who was going to be killed. And I really felt like as soon as Eugene said he found a way to create ammunition, I was like, he's got to do it himself. There's no way he can just pass this along and expect other people to do it. No, he has to be the one to take care of this. So, yeah, he has a big role to play, and I think Eugene right now is probably more important than he's ever been on the series. And, you know, Rosita wanting revenge, and of course other people want revenge as well. So it is time for Eugene to step up, and of course they're gonna need more weapons, but I know that'll get worked out, obviously. And like I said, I feel like Negan's downfall will be a combination of things. It's gonna be partly people of Alexandria finding a way to arm themselves, and then also Negan's, you know, his crew basically imploding some, and some people turning on him, including Dwight. And then of course he has Daryl, who's just there waiting to get his payback, and also to make amends for the damage that he caused. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things fall apart for Negan, and I wonder how long it's going to play out. I got a sneaking suspicion it's really going to get dragged out, but I hope not, but I just got a feeling that's the way that it's going to be. So I do want to hear your thoughts on this episode. I actually thought this video would be shorter than it was. Maybe I went off a little bit too much on Negan, but again, you all let me know what you're thinking about the character. Please, like I always say, no spoilers from the comics. I don't want to hear anything about the comics, not even hints. Nothing at all about the comics. I know the comics are great. I will get to them eventually, but for right now, I'm just focusing on the television series. So again, please, no spoilers at all, not even hints from the comics. But I do want to hear your thoughts definitely on the series, this episode in particular. You know, what you think about Negan, what do you think about other characters like Dwight, what's going on with Daryl right now, Eugene, you know, Rosita, all these different characters. Just share your thoughts with me, and I'll definitely give you some feedback. And thank you all for taking the time to watch. And, you know, if you're new to the channel, definitely make sure that you like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all again real soon.